tell me about your experience here. Tell me the successes and the magic that you've used to explain to people who don't understand that there's a world and an ecosystem where you get better support by not having a support contract than the world where you have paid money so that you have this SLA and you can point to this thing with somebody on the hook to provide answers to you. How do you explain to somebody that that one model that has no obligation whatsoever seems, for some strange, unintuitive reason, to work as well as, if not better, than the paid version? How do you explain that?
I think that's the $1 million question. I think if I had the correct answer, I would be a lot busier than I am right now, than that I've been. No, I think it's just I think it's really interesting because even when I talk to my partner about going to the conferences, no, and just now that I was in Indianapolis, it was like, no, because I'm hanging out with these guys, and like we went to lunch and we're talking about this, and she's like, but do you know these people? It's like, no, like I knew one of them. I met him at another conference, and like we spoke and chatted and blah blah. And so, like, so why are you hanging out with them? It's kind of like because that's what we do because we've got common interests, and she's kind of like, is that normal? It's like, yeah, that's very normal. Suddenly, like somebody that you spoke to in a conference, like you might not see them for years, but you suddenly like send them an email or send them a message, and you keep in touch, and you're talking about the same kind of things, and then you see them again. It's kind of like that's why I say like we're kind of like our own tribe, and only the ones that are in the tribe understand the tribe. And so yeah, like this kind of like interactions are very for outsiders. I think they're quite uncommon sometimes. Um, but also like this, a lot of people are not aware about the forums, and they're not aware about the support ecosystem. Um, when it came to the financial institutions implementations of the core banking with MIFOS, that was one of the things that we did actually pitch in as part of the convincing process for the executives, because I would say like, how do we know it's going to work? It's kind of like, well, it should work, and if we can't find the solution, then there's this whole support network in Africa, in the UK, in Brazil, in Middle East that are using that technology, and if we don't have the solution, we can ask for their help. And they didn't kind of like believe us at the beginning, and then we did have an issue with the payment systems for the transfers, and we were not able to find a solution for it at the time, and we were short staffed as well, because also having the right people for open source is also difficult sometimes. And so we actually like called up and started getting a couple of favors, and it turned out that somebody somewhere in the community did have something that would help us. So it wasn't the whole solution, but they gave us this component that then we could build upon, and then we could actually resolve the whole thing. So I think that's kind of like one of the examples where we did have to kind of like use it as part of the pitch. But it's I think it's very difficult. It's kind of like making everybody around the world understand what actual cybersecurity is. For us, it can be pretty clear and pretty easy, and actually, but for other people, you're talking gibberish.
I think events get so, I don't know, underestimated and underappreciated so many times. Like I still remember having to fight for being able to go to a conference sometimes while I was working for Ericsson. I mean, I do understand it has a cost, and if everyone all of a sudden goes to conferences, then who's going to do the work? And it also costs a lot of money to go to a conference. But at the same time, like when you go out and have a beer at the social hour with someone, that person will be the person who picks up the phone or who answers your chat ping and will either have a solution for the question that you have, or will at least probably be able to point you to a direction that is useful to you to be able to find a solution. So making those connections can be just so invaluable. It's amazing. Like it changes people's lives, making those new connections, that new network of people that you know all around the globe.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, how do you explain again to a manager that's responsible for that travel budget that your it is enhancing your support contract that doesn't exist because you've created this informal social connection with the guy who wrote the software that you're now depending on, right? And that social connection is just how he's going to be quite willing to pick up that phone when you give him a call, because he knows who you are and you've had that interaction. I mean, these are all of the non-formal things that happen in this open source collaboration ecosystem that are, as you say, Ildiko, they're critical, right? To be able to get that approval to go. And we all know that there's significant difference in the productivity of developers, right? This is well documented for a long period of time, and having that connection to be able to answer questions and help in getting things resolved, that's adding to the productivity of the developer. So when you think of the cost of the developer, how much that is, and then you compare that to the cost of sending them to an event where they can get those kind of connections, I mean, you're upping the percentage of the guy's productivity, or gals, the person's productivity. So but those are, again, these are all fuzzy concepts. We know them from experience and history. Explaining it to somebody who's not part of the tribe or part of that world is really difficult.
Maybe an easy way is like the same way that you need to go and do networking events to create sales. Well, you need to do networking events to create knowledge and collaboration.
Well, that's but there again's the problem, right? Because the sales guy can argue that, his ability to network is a direct connection to the revenue generated. And this also is another problem that falls back with open source: is how do you make money on open source? Well, you don't, you save money, right? And this is a way of productively saving more money by, giving your developers this set of resources, which are the connections that they make.
And I mean, at the same time, like, just imagine a larger community, OpenStack, Kubernetes, a lot of people in the community, but even more people are looking into the technology and trying to ping someone in the community. And if you're an expert in any of the components of these large open source projects, then you're probably being pinged by a lot of people. So who you're going to respond to, the complete stranger or the person who you had beer 2 weeks ago at an event? You probably pick the person first. I'm not saying that you never respond to the newcomer, because that is not true. But if it's a busy day and I get 10 pings, I will probably respond to the person I know, because I want to help them. And I know them. So it's just kind of a human thing to do. So in that sense, your connection of getting that support that you need will just be way more efficient. And at the same time, which companies probably don't want to hear, you will probably start to become part of that ecosystem who has the knowledge. So you will be pinged by people, but then you always learn something, whether you're the person who pings someone or you're the person who's being pinged and asked. Both people always learn something new, so that knowledge base just grows. So that way, that investment really does pay out, but it's really hard to put into numbers.